Welcome to JD's Prep. In this problem, we have two questions. We first want to explain how to determine the zeros of f of x equals x plus 3 times x minus 1 times x minus 8, and then state the zeros of the function. Now there are two main ways that you can approach finding the zeros of a function. You can either graph it and find the x-intercepts, which would be one possible explanation that you could have here. You could graph f of x and find the x-intercepts. Or, anytime you have a function, f of x or g of x, or whatever it may be called, and you want to find the zeros of the function, another possibility is to solve the equation f of x equals 0. So you're setting the equation equal to 0 and trying to solve the equation in order to find the zeros of the function. Either one of those will give you the zeros for this function f of x. In order to solve this function, or to solve this equation f of x equals 0, we would need what is called the zero product property, which says that if we have multiple numbers multiplied together and the product equals 0, then one of those must be 0. So if I have something of the form a times b equals 0, that tells me that either a equals 0 or b equals 0. If I have three numbers that are multiplied together and the product is 0, so if I have something like a times b times c equals 0, then either a equals 0 or b equals 0 or c equals 0. This equation is really nicely set up for us to use this zero product property, because it consists of three numbers, the x plus 3, x minus 1, and x minus 8, that are multiplied together. And to solve the equation f of x equals 0, we would be setting that equal to 0. So let's do that now for the second part, where we want to state the zeros of the function. We need to find what the zeros are. If we set that equation equal to 0, we have 0 equals x plus 3 times x minus 1 times x minus 8. Since these three numbers are multiplied together and the product is equal to 0, then from the zero product property that we wrote over here on the right, one of those must be 0. So either x plus 3 equals 0, or x minus 1 equals 0, or x minus 8 equals 0. If I solve each of these equations for x, those will give me the zeros of the function, the exact same way as if we graphed the function f of x and found the x-intercepts. Solving the first equation, all I have to do is subtract 3 from both sides, and we get the 0 x equals negative 3. For the second one, x minus 1 equals 0. To solve that, I'll add 1 to both sides, and we get the 0 x equals 1. And lastly, for x minus 8 equals 0, we can add 8 to both sides, and we end up with a 0 x equals 8. If I plug any one of these three x values into my original equation, f of x equals x plus 3 times x minus 1 times x minus 8, I'm going to end up with that right side equaling 0, because any one of them will make one of those factors equal 0. So therefore, these three x values of negative 3, positive 1, and positive 8 are the zeros of this function.